blonde, serene, and modest in a way that was far from ostentatious. The young Jane Seymour immediately caught the king's eye. She made no effort to draw attention to herself, displaying no excessive pride, and seemed to stand apart from the crowd. At Wolf Hall, Henry VIII even wondered how he had overlooked this lady during his time at court. Jane had served Queen Catherine of Aragon before moving on to Anne Boleyn's household. Little did Lady Seymour know about the remarkable changes that awaited her in the near future. What could she do? The gentle angel, as she would later be called, was entirely devoid of any hint of selfishness or vanity. Jane's mother was the truly dazzling Margaret Wentworth. At the court of the first Tudor, King Henry VII, she was unmatched in beauty and charm. The beautiful mother found pursuits far more interesting than tending to her children, so the Seymour offspring's education was not a priority. Did the children learn to read and write? That was enough. The son was quickly placed in the service of a page, while the daughters were sent to Queen Catherine. The parents' carelessness even extended to record-keeping. Historians cannot pinpoint the exact date of Jane Seymour's birth, only that it was in the early years of the 16th century. From this playful lady, a modest daughter grew up. Jane loved to embroider, and her creations were marked by elegance and precision. Dance with others? No, thank you. It was far better to choose threads for a new, intricate pattern. How delightful. It would take a lot of effort. Perhaps that is why Queen Anne Boleyn didn't pay much attention to this lady-in-waiting. She could hardly imagine that the king would become enamored with this pale lady after her, and who was as striking as lightning. Before Lady Seymour, Henry had already glanced at other ladies besides the Queen. Boleyn, to whom he had sacrificed so much, began to sour the king's mood. She had not gifted him a son and had started throwing jealousy fits. The royal couple began to drift apart, and by the time of his visit to Wolf Hall, Henry had lost the affection he once had for Anne. It's unclear what role Jane herself played in the events that followed, but historians believe her brothers may have had a hand in it. They allegedly tried to persuade the king, both directly and through intermediaries, that it was time to change wives. It's unlikely that Henry was so easily swayed. His irritation had grown without outside help. In the end, Anne Boleyn was accused of treason and witchcraft and was executed, and Lady Seymour became the new Queen of England. The engagement took place the day after the execution of the former queen. The wedding followed swiftly. The announcement of a new queen in England came in June of 1536. For the courtiers, it was no secret. They already knew of the king's inclination. He had begun showering Jane with precious trinkets as early as the winter. Jane could have been the perfect queen, caring, gentle, and meek. Her pious motto, ready to obey and serve, aligned perfectly with King Henry's expectations. However, there was one area of disagreement. Lady Seymour did not embrace the Anglican faith, but this difference was quickly resolved. Jane understood that it was best not to argue with her husband and made little effort to assert her own views. The kindness of Queen Jane extended even to those she could have remained indifferent towards, the children of previous queens. Thanks to her, Princesses Mary and Elizabeth returned to court. These fallen ladies. It was Lady Seymour who insisted that the children celebrate Christmas with their father. And when spring arrived the following year, Jane brought immense joy to the king by announcing that she was expecting a child. Henry's happiness was complete when his wife gave him the long-awaited son. The process was arduous, and Jane endured nearly 3 days of labor. The boy was named Edward, inheriting his mother's fair hair and delicate features. According to custom, Jane could not attend her son's baptism, but standing by the font were the 2 princesses who would eventually also ascend to the throne. However, just a few days later, Queen Jane fell ill. She suffered from pain and developed a fever. Historian Alison Weir suggests that the midwives may have introduced an infection into the queen's system. Perhaps some other mistake was made as well. But by October, the gentle angel was gone. The farewell ceremony for Jane Seymour was led by Princess Mary, to whom the queen had been so kind. A grieving Henry VIII decreed that he wanted to find peace beside Jane, his beloved wife. Little Edward, left motherless at such a young age, became King Edward VI but ruled for a short time and left no heirs. His successors were his sisters, Jane Grey, Mary, and Elizabeth. Interestingly, Jane Seymour's brother, Thomas, attempted to court Elizabeth. However, the princess rejected Thomas's advances, and he eventually married the widowed Queen Catherine Parr, the last wife of Henry VIII. But that is a completely different story. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like, and thank you for your comments.